The largest population of Afro-Latinos in the U.S. reside in the Northeast region of the United States. Could their perspectives or ideas be a little different than mine? I live in the rural South of the United States, and I invite you to join me as we learn about culture, people, the differences in culture, because, culture is everywhere. Take this podcast as cultural lessons about the world and the interesting people in it. So, welcome. My name is Jennifer White, and I'm an Afro-Latina teacher in the rural South. Hello, everyone, and thank you for choosing to listen to my podcast today. I hope you are doing well. Today, I'm so excited to introduce to you to the first Afro-Hispanist I've ever met. His name is Dr. John Maddox, and he's a professor at UAB University in Birmingham, Alabama. Dr. Maddox is a good friend of my husband Reynaldo and I, and in this episode, we have the honor of learning more about the African diaspora in Latin America through this fascinating event called the International Decade for People of African Descent. Have you ever even heard of that? It started in 2015 and it happens to end next year in 2024. This is sponsored by the United Nations and Dr. Maddox is part of it. Don't worry about getting a notepad as you listen to him. My program notes have every author and resource he mentions. So just listen and learn what is going on in our world today regarding Afro descendants and their rights. I'm so excited today to have Dr. John Maddox. He tells me to call him John, but my Latino roots is hard. It's hard for me to call him John, but I do push myself and call him John. But behind his back, I call him Dr. Maddox. He deserves that title. He worked hard for it. And it's an honor for me to have him here. He's one of my new friends that I met in the past 2 years. And I remember meeting Dr. Maddox because I was flipping through Facebook and I saw that he was going to talk about Afro descendants. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my topic. Oh, and I looked at his face and I'm like, I wonder where he's from. If he's from Brazil or he's from, I don't judge by colors. I'm like, I wonder where he's from. I wonder if he's just, he just knows a lot about this topic. I had no clue. And I send them a random email, not thinking that, you guys have to be careful because sometimes you send emails to people and they actually read them and will write back. And I'm thinking he's famous, he's so popular, he's from this university that's awesome in my state. But I sent him an email and I said, hey, I can't attend your workshop, but I love your topic and I want to listen to it. And he responded such a nice and friendly way. He says, hey, I follow you. I follow you on Facebook. I'm like, ah, and I'm screaming, freaking out. He said, sure, I'll share it with you. It's no problem. And to me, I was like, wow, all that hard work. I just had to ask. And he just let me in and he let me share with that information. Today, he's going to talk about a wonderful topic. So, Mr. John Maddox, Dr. John Maddox, welcome today. Is there anything you want to tell us how to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. Jennifer is a wonderful colleague. We worked on different projects in the past. We worked on a panel on colorism in the Heights, and she's just been wonderful to work with for many months now, years now, I think. And I'm very grateful to be here. I'm honored to be here, and I'm excited to talk about the African diaspora, and in particular about the UN Decade for People of African Descent.
Yes, I am so excited to hear about this because I heard about that when I was in quarantine and I thought, what? We have a decade? Wait, what? We don't have a month? We have a decade in the whole United Nations? How does this work, Dr. Maddox? Can you tell us how that works?
Well, this is how it works. The United Nations has been supporting local groups to assert their rights and to reclaim their culture. This is something that I've come to know about because I am what you would call an Afro-Hispanist. So I study Black people in Latin America, which interestingly, and not many people stop to think about this, that's where most Black people are in the Americas. There are many thousands, even millions more of Afro descendants in Latin America than in the United States. So I think that that's one contribution that the UN Decade for People of African Descent has made, is raising awareness of those people. The decade began in the 1990s as a concept, as an idea, with the what they called the Slave Route Project. Around 1994, or beginning in 1994, UNESCO, in collaboration with historians, anthropologists, and different sources of government funding, they supported the creation of monuments at different areas along where Africans were enslaved and taken to the New World. And so that was a very important movement because it was international, and it focused on the Academy and what the Academy can do to remember people that have been historically overlooked. Then in 2001, there was a very important international conference called, and I have to write this down, the World Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerances.
Wow.
That was held by the United Nations in Durban, South Africa, a very appropriate place because of the history of apartheid. And that was a worldwide conference that was focused on addressing issues of racism and to support the recovery of Black culture and history, as well as the assertion of Black rights through human rights discourse. Now, that's called Durban 2001 in most scholarship because it's just faster to call it that. Before Durban 2001, you have a regional conference in Latin America that is known as Santiago de Chile 2000. And so that is where Black leaders, Black educators gathered to assert what rights need to be protected for Black people in Latin America in particular. And they started with a very basic topic, which is, what should people be called? And the term that they decided upon had not existed before in history with this, really at all, but with this denotation at all, which is Afro-descendant, right? In Spanish, it's Afrodescendiente. In Portuguese, Afrodescendente, and you can use Afro to say it faster, or for an adjective. And so, so that was their starting point, and they created a series of ramifications from this conference that has brought a lot of needed attention to Black people in Latin America.
Wow, that's amazing. So, with it being the United Nations, does the United States have any part in this?
Sadly, the United States was not a part of Santiago 2000. And that's led to some disappointment because there was a lack of leadership. Marta Moreno Vega, who is a Puerto Rican scholar, a New Yorican scholar to be exact, she was very disappointed because she attended this event, and she felt that the United States showed a lack of leadership there. That has also led to different interpretations of what Afrodescendiente means. And there are people like Silvia Valero, who's a scholar in literature, who only uses Afrodescendiente to refer to somebody from Latin America. So she would not call an African American Afro-descendant. I disagree with that definition because I feel like the diaspora has been too divided for too long. And so I think we need to look at the diaspora as a unit while keeping differences in mind, yes, but just like you keep the differences in mind between an Afro-Mexican and an Afro-Argentinian, you keep in mind the differences of African Americans as well as part of this greater whole.
Wow. So what can we do though in the United States to because we don't have that support, if our government's not in that UN um, effort, what can we do to promote this?
Look, the African influence in these two spaces, I'm missing out on the majority of people there, and I'm missing out on a huge uh, part of shared culture in these two regions. And so that's been something that's given coherence to my project for many years now. So I did not start studying African diaspora literature because of the decade. I have benefited from it tremendously because 2015 is the year after I graduated with my PhD.
Wow.
And I did my dissertation on an Afro-Colombian writer named Manuel Zapata Oliveira, who is a precursor to all of this kinds of thought, and an Afro-Brazilian novelist named Ana Maria Gonçalves, who wrote a very important novel about enslaved women. And so my tenure clock, which is the beginning of my scholarly project as a professor, coincided with something that cannot be exaggerated in its importance in creating Black writers and creating Black culture, because that's existed since the colonial era in different forms. But it is something that has helped allies like myself to bring attention to this very important part of Latin America.
That is amazing. So since the beginning of this decade, right, of this movement, have you seen any changes in at least in different countries? Have you seen any bills passed or any changes at all? Have you met people that were involved in this movement?
I have. I would say that in Brazil, you see in 2003, remember Durban is in 2001, Santiago's 2000. So in 2003, you have a bill passed in Brazil where Afro-Brazilian history is supposed to be part of the curriculum at all state schools. And it's a wonderful step forward. Like many things in Latin America, the problem was in the implementation. And so you'll read articles to this day of disappointment about teachers were not retrained in how to focus on this history. Materials were not provided to adequately to focus on this history. And so there was a lot of nice talk, but not enough nice action. The another issue with the implementation of Black history in Brazil has been a sort of backlash over the last 6 years or so to what's perceived as politically correct culture. And you have the phenomenon of Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro has called himself the tropical Trump. And so his whole brand is saying things that make liberal people and minorities upset. And so you have, in addition to the liberal side of politics not doing enough to implement its own projects, you've got the conservative side that is benefiting from saying that these projects are divisive and they're victimizing, making people feel like victims. And so those are two major issues that have happened during this this decade, in addition to others.
Oh my word. But I appreciate that in Brazil there is movement. At least there's a movement. I feel like here, so tell me more about this movement and how have you introduced it to your school? Because I know you teach at the University of Alabama at Birmingham in the rural South where there's a lot of different bad talk about Alabama and racism, and how are you able to bring up themes like this into your university?
Thank you for the question. I have found that the students at the University of Alabama at Birmingham are very respectful people. And I think that regardless of their political background or home life, I think that they're willing to listen. And I think it's a huge benefit that we are a very diverse campus, not only racially diverse, but we have people from different national backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religions. So I think people make friends and they want to make friends. And so that changes how they react to one another, react to these topics. I was the guy that had the bright idea of teaching Latino literature when Trump was running for president.
Brave guy.
So we had a small class. It was a literature class, and we had people from across the political spectrum, and they, sadly, to the surprise of some, had a very intelligent and respectful conversation about what their concerns are, what is their vision for the country, and tried to understand where one another was coming from. So I'm very proud of my students and proud of my role in allowing people to express themselves and to not presume ill will in people that are not like them. Specific examples of incorporating Afro-Latin American culture into the classroom is I have the benefit of a pre-existing class that was created by Dr. Delita Martin Ogunshola, who's been a very generous mentor with me, and it's called his African Hispanophone Writers, which is about Black writers in Latin America, in Spanish America in particular. And what I've done, since many of our students take this class as their first literature class in Spanish, or maybe their second, I include discourse about Black people from the times of slavery. So that way you understand what people are up against. So I include, for example, the role of Bartolomé de las Casas in both creating the idea of human rights as we understand them today for indigenous people, and proposing that African people be enslaved instead of them, and all of the contradictions that includes. So we're going to include oral literature that includes the Palenque de San Basilio in Colombia. And so it's not written down in a traditional poem or a traditional narrative, but they definitely have their own literature and their own culture. So I'm including oral literature, literature about Black people. I'm including the first slave narrative, which is Juan Francisco Manzano. He's the only official slave narrative of Latin America. We're talking about El Reino de este Mundo, which is about the Haitian Revolution and its importance to Latin America and to your home country and your family's home country of the Dominican Republic. And so I've been able to teach the classic Black literature class, but UAB is a place that rewards innovation. So I've also been able to teach a class on the African diaspora and music that everybody knows and everybody loves. You can't have salsa without African influence. You have salsa, merengue, bachata. You've got the various different folkloric rhythms. So you've got African influence in something that affects everybody's life, everybody's culture, and brings joy to so many people throughout the diaspora. And I like to think to my students.
That is amazing, and I applaud you for being that person for students and for young people that that they probably wouldn't know. A lot of the things you're saying have no clue, and I am also honored to be able to share information that you have mentioned to my students. And you're right, the same thing with my students. They're welcoming and respectful, and I guess it starts there. I think we're in a good place to start. And you were telling me, I want to go back a little bit. You were telling me that you're an Afro-Hispanist. Is that how you pronounce it? That's how you pronounce it? Okay. Okay.
Afro-Hispanist, yeah.
Okay, good. Because sometimes I have a bad accent. Okay, so is this something that you wanted to do like when you graduated from high school? Or is this something that was developed later on?
I knew I wanted to be a Spanish teacher,
Okay.
but I didn't really know anything about Black people in Latin America. I was a high school student from South Georgia. My the teacher that inspired me to become a Spanish teacher like her is named Jane Futrell. Everybody knew her as Juana, and this is in Alamo, Georgia. Feel free to find it on a map. Yes. She was the person who taught me both literature and Spanish, and she organized a tour of Europe for the high school students over spring break, and I loved every second of it. And I wanted to be like her. I wanted to go abroad. I wanted to take students abroad. I wanted to teach language, and I also loved literature. And when I got to college and found out I could just read the literature in the language, then I was hooked. This is what I do. And naturally, within that process, I loved my Spanish literature class. I've been to Spain 4 times. I've been to Mexico for study abroad. I was in Puerto Rico for a semester. I love traveling and learning about the Spanish-speaking world. But this was a topic that was cool because of the musical side and because of the historical side. But it's also something that desperately needed to be studied at a university level, because I would argue that until around the 1960s, people were just blind to so much of this history and so much of this culture. And so I think that scholars today, now that we've had the veil taken off of our eyes, a veil which was of racism, of ignorance of different cultures, of Eurocentrism, of thinking that Europe does everything right, now that that veil has been lifted, there are so many beautiful things to see, so many different lives to rediscover. And I'm honored to be a part of that.
Yes, yes. And I applaud Juana. Thank you, Juana. Shout out to you for bringing forth Dr. Maddox. I mean, that's amazing. That's something that I do want to it's actually a presentation I want to do at the national level, to how to teach teachers to encourage your students to become teachers. Because I know my daughter Ariel, she wanted to be a Spanish teacher, mainly because I'm so excited about being a Spanish teacher. And she saw my excitement, and she's like, hey, I'm going to be a Spanish teacher too. And we need teachers. We are in bad shortage. I mean, just like we don't have groceries on those shelves in the grocery store. Maybe that's the amount of teachers we need. we need teachers. We've lost so many, and have to just give a shout out to Juan out there for doing that for you. Now let's get back to the UN event. Are there any events or any activities that you feel that have been beneficial for any country, for their to receive awareness of the Black
100%.
diaspora? Okay.
100%. I would argue that it's a country, but even that statement is a political, can cause a lot of political arguments. But Puerto Rico has benefited tremendously from the UN Decade for people of African descent, because the big thing that this decade did is not teach people to be Black. People knew that they were discriminated against. People stood up for their rights. People knew that their race or being racialized meant something in how they moved through the world well before this decade. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression from that. But what it did was it asked a very important question to leaders. What are you doing for this decade?
Yes.
And we live in a time in history when the answer, nothing, sounds terrible.
You're right.
In the case of Puerto Rico, we have a great leader named Marielba Torres, and she is Mexicano-Puertorriqueña, right? So she is a bicultural individual, and she's very much in touch with the cultural world in Mexico. She is an art historian who has worked at the University of Puerto Rico for many years. And she went to a conference in Mexico and learned about what was then the year of people of African descent. So it started out as a year in 2011, and many groups argued that 1 year was simply not enough time to implement the changes that they wanted to implement in terms of human rights progress and in terms of cultural production. And that worked out very well for Marielva because that gave her time to come back to Puerto Rico, where she works and lives, and to form a committee of people who have been fighting for Afro-Puerto Rican rights and culture for decades, and to put together the first Afrodescendencia en Puerto Rico conference.
Wow.
Now, this was huge. I had the honor of presenting at this conference on literature, but there were people there who are much more important than I am. You've got Quince Duncan, who is the leader, arguably, for Afro Costa Rican rights. He was a keynote speaker there. Right. Ana Irma Rivera Lacen, who has been a feminist since the 70s, but was one of the first Black feminists in the island's history. She's now a senator. She spoke at this conference. And Marta Moreno Vega spoke there, and Mayra Santos Febres both spoke there. They're very important Black writers. So the leadership came together, the authors came together, along with students and people who are interested in this topic, and they got the ball rolling, and they brought international attention to this topic in Puerto Rico. They've, through it all, through Hurricane Maria, they put together a second and a third conference. I'm going to check the dates on those conferences very quickly.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, definitely.
That was in 2015 was the first, 2017 was the second, and 2021 was the third conference that they held. And it changed in focus each time they held it. The 2017 conference, the second one, is very important to you and to your listeners because it's focused on secondary education, reaching parents and reaching students at the high school level to make them aware of Black history on the island, of discrimination on the island, of how to assert one's rights, and how to see themselves as beautiful and as important in a way that they hadn't been told before. Puerto Rico is just like the rest of Latin America in that you are often told that this is a racial democracy. We don't have discrimination here, but it will happen in people's lived experience, and sometimes it'll even happen in more subtle ways than you might expect. You might, if you tell somebody that they're not beautiful just as they are, then they have to change. So they have to straighten their hair. They have to date people with lighter skin. They have to make changes in their lives that could be very hurtful to themselves and to others. And so the 2017 conference was important for high school teachers, high school students, and for families across the island. So I would say that Afrodescendencia Puerto Rico is one example of major change that has come from this basic question of what are you doing for this decade?
Yeah, what are you doing? Especially for a whole decade. I mean, that gives you enough time to change. And I'm disappointed as well as you that in the United States we haven't had a celebration for that, which it doesn't matter. We don't care if they do it. We're going to do something about it. And I think you talking about this just puts a fire in me, just wants me to do more and wants me to celebrate beyond the 10 years, beyond the decade, spreading the word of what has been done, maybe studying what was the success of the decade and share that with people. And what can we do, even though our leaders are not doing anything? I know that I heard about Canada, that there was a representative there at the UN, that they went to that meeting, but Canada didn't do much. So, but the person I was listening to, which I forgot her name, I forget names, I'm not good at that. Anyway, so the person I was listening to was saying, we didn't do much in Canada, but I teamed up with the United States, which wasn't there either, and we formed an alliance. We formed an organization of Afro descendants of Africa and the United States. And I thought, wow, that's cool. So this decade has also been uniting nations together to do things together and to form these things. And I wish it was something that teachers had like PD that we can go to the United Nations meeting of this movement of the decade of Afro descendants, because I would love to be in that room when these people with these different accents, different cultures, different countries, just speaking about their struggles and what needs to be changed in their country, and people coming together, making laws. What an excitement. What an excitement. How do you feel that you are part of that? Other than your writing, because I know
I'm
you've written a lot and you presented a lot. Is there anything else that you feel like you got to do more, or what?
I am excited to get to teach on this topic. I am excited to bring people together that wouldn't meet each other otherwise. I'll give you an example. We did a colloquium on Black resistance and negotiation in Latin America that brought together different scholars from 4 different countries and from universities across the United States. But we also brought as a keynote speaker a man named Bernardino Perez Miranda, who uh, is from Palenque de San Basilio. And Palenque de San Basilio is a place that is a village that is descended from runaway slaves. Maroons is the term we use in the literature. And they said they were not going to be enslaved. They hid out in an inhospitable region, and their descendants lived in isolation for about 300 years, and they maintained their Creole language. There are very few Creole languages in the Spanish-speaking world, so they are very important for linguists and anthropologists because they were rediscovered in the mid 20th century. And you can now go on tours of Palenque de San Basilio. It's a fascinating place. They still have the traditional architecture with grass huts, and they still have their dances, their music, and their religious rites. And I got to bring Bernardino to Birmingham
Really?
for yeah, he had never been to the United States in his life, and so he got to go to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute
Wow.
and to take a picture with a hero of his, which is Rosa Parks,
Yeah.
and to get to meet people in the United States was very exciting for him. On the other hand, we had undergraduate students who, again, are people of goodwill, but they're students, they're learning. And they didn't know there were Black people in Latin America.
Wow.
So you go from zero knowledge to getting to meet somebody from there. And that's really exciting for me. And that's something that has been one of the great honors in my life. Another example is service learning. I got to take a group of students to Puerto Rico to learn about Puerto Rico and to work in La Perla, which is the poorest part of San Juan.
Wow.
And it's a neighborhood that's been trying to clean up its reputation. It was very bad before, and there were drug dealers there. The DEA went in, arrested the drug dealers, and this was an opening of the community. Many people in this community are Afro descendants, they're Afro Puerto Rican.
Okay.
And so we got to paint murals, work with children,
Wow.
put together a community garden for people who live there. So we got the chance to learn about Puerto Rico, but also to give back to the community and help people out. So I would encourage other teachers to learn as much as you can about the African diaspora, incorporate it into your classroom whenever you can. And with the resources that you have at hand, ask yourself, what can I do to make a direct impact in my community or in other communities?
That's right. That's right. We do need that, and we do need to. The teachers need to do those trips, those service trips, and include their students. Sometimes these trips are very luxurious, and they go to these wonderful places. We took a trip to Spain, very luxurious, very beautiful. I learned a lot, but there was no service in it, and it just seems like, okay, we need to shift our focus to not just that Spain is just a wonderful place with museums and history, but that there are people struggling there that need help and may need our help. So you're so right. Now, how about people? My audience is a little bit more broad. It does have teachers in here, but we also have parents and just individuals that
Mhm.
like to hear about these topics of minorities. How would you suggest that parents or just individuals can get involved with being part of that movement?
I would encourage parents to tell their children to read in Spanish and to seek out Black authors. I'll give you one example. Yolanda Arroyo Pizarro is a very talented writer who works in a lot of different genres. So if you have adolescents that are convinced they're not kids anymore and want to read just literature for adults, then they could pick up a copy of Las Negras, which is about the story of enslaved women in Puerto Rico. However, she's also a prolific children's book writer, and she writes books about Black kids growing up. There's a book called Mejorar la Raza,
Ah,
which is about a grandmother that is explaining to her daughter that she doesn't have to believe that old adage of you need to find somebody who's lighter skinned than you so that you can move up the social ladder. So these are different messages than you might have seen in children's books before. So I would look into Yolanda Arroyo Pizarro. I would look into the folklore of Palenque de San Basilio. Um, I would look into Cuentos Afro-Cubanos by Lidia Cabrera, who was an anthropologist who wrote about Black people in Cuba. So there are works out there. They're easier to find now because of the internet, and I think those are a couple of examples. Um, I I think that that's a place that parents can start is just the media that we consume, and those are just a couple of examples.
that's good. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate this movement of the decade of Afro descendants. And I just love that, Afro Latinos are not alone. Sometimes sometimes I think, oh, it's Afro Latinos and African Americans, just us. It's just us, we just chilling together over here. But it's not. That's not how it works. It's like there's African descendants all over the world, and to know that there is a movement like this where we can connect with China, with Asia, with all of Asia, with South America,
Mhm.
North America, with the Caribbean, all of us together, and notice that we've had similar struggles. It's like the
Mhm.
struggle connects us, and our
Right.
color connects us, and our ancestors
Mhm.
connect us. The music connects us. I was just showing my kids about the African American step, and we were learning the basic step of African American step, which is amazing. They have it in sororities and fraternities. But then in turn, I'm planning a lesson that I'm going to teach them the zapateo, which is an Afro
Uh-huh.
Mexican step. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're so connected. African Americans have
Mhm.
step, Mexicans have step. I'm gonna go find out if Dominicans have a step too, or Puerto Rico has a step. It's just so amazing how you see that connection, that you go from culture
Mhm.
to culture, and you just find the same things. And is there anything else that you would like to share with us about this
Right.
topic?
Well, two texts occurred to me, and I know that the young people I work with are much more inclined to watch a movie than to read a book.
Mhm.
I think it's because they're busy and they have other things to focus on, and we're just flooded with media. Two movies that are easily accessible. One is from Puerto Rico, and it's called Cimarron, and it's about a historical slave rebel, and it's an inspirational tale of a Black man who's fighting for freedom. I think it's 2007 when it came out, and you can rent that for $4 from Prime. So I would check out Cimarron. You could watch that with your family. I think it's family friendly, even if it's a very difficult topic to address. And if you want to learn about Afro-Brazilian history through film, I would recommend a film called Amarelo, or Amarelo. It's like amarillo in Portuguese. It's got subtitles. It's by a rap artist named Emicida, who is very interested in Black history and increasing Black consciousness in his country, but it's also a great introduction to the history of artists and leaders and performers in Brazil that are Afro-descendants.
That's awesome. Thank you. You know so many names and you remember them. Or do you have notes in front of you?
I double check because I
You
don't
double
always
check. Okay.
remember them.
Like I forget
I don't always
names.
remember them exactly.
Even people in my family or people right here is like when I get nervous. So that's what happens. But thank you so much, Dr. Maddox. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you speaking to this audience. I appreciate you continuing this effort. That I think we're all gonna die with it. We just have this passion inside, and we're just gonna keep on going, and we're gonna celebrate Afro descendants together. Thank you for being part of that, and I'm happy to join you, and you join me, and this is just a way we support each other. I'm just so honored that you're doing that over there in the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I hope my daughter goes there. Just hope she goes there. She told me if she can't find any other university, she said, I'll go to
Well,
UAB. I said,
we'll be thrilled
please
to have
go.
her.
I know. She wants to be
Thank you
a
so much
doctor, so
for. Oh well, this is where she needs to go.
I
This is where
know.
she needs to go. Bilingual doctors. That's what we specialize in.
That's
So we
right.
will be very happy to have her come. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for inviting me on and for your important work by bringing attention to this topic at multiple levels of education. Thank you so much to the parents and students and other teachers that are listening. I welcome your questions. I'm at JT Maddox, Maddox, at uab.edu, and I'd love to meet other people that are interested in this topic. Thank you all.
Yes, and I will definitely put this his information in the description and also the link to his book. You said that your book, we have access to it like on the internet, right?
Yes, if
Okay.
you are subscribed to Scribd, SCRIBD.com, it's a subscription service. It's not very expensive, but you can read it, quote unquote, for free on that subscription service. But if you guys want to check out Challenging the Black Atlantic, it's a book about books, which is what literary critics write. It's a book about Manuel Zapato Oliveira that I was mentioning before from Colombia, and Ana Maria Gonçalves, and how they expand our notion of the Black Atlantic, much like this conversation has, of pointing out these connections between different nations.
Awesome. Yes. So excited. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much, Dr. Maddox, John, Mr. Maddox, all the titles I call him, and more. More awesome titles.
And those are the ones you can say on air.
Yes. Afro Hispanic. Oh my gosh. Afro Hispanic. I can't pronounce that right. It's okay. I don't know how to thank you enough for listening to this episode. This is one of those episodes where you sit back and think, what am I doing about this? Is this worth researching or talking more about? I believe so. Afro descendants around the world have been ignored for too long, and we are constantly being misinformed about what's going on. I encourage you today to research this further. Talk it over with someone. Let me hear from you. Contact Dr. Maddox and let him know you're interested in this topic. We could definitely use your help. I encourage you to be a change in your community in a positive way. Go forth, have a spirit of excellence, and be the best resident, citizen, human being in this world. I hope to hear from you soon. Besos y abrazos from Alabama. Hola, listeners. Are you looking for an incredible way to make a positive impact in the lives of young students? Well, we've got an amazing opportunity for you. Introducing Harvest International School, a beacon of hope for 300 students in Nairobi, Kenya, led by passionate educators Reynaldo and myself. This school has transformed the lives of these young minds, providing them with education, support, and a brighter future. Imagine this: 300 kids who were once victims of life on the streets of Nairobi are attending the school thanks to the unwavering dedication of 15 teachers and one director at Harvest International School. But the journey doesn't stop there. We need your help to continue this incredible work. With a monthly goal of $1,500, your support can ensure that these students receive the education they deserve and create opportunities they never thought possible. No donation is too small, whether it's weekly, monthly, or even yearly. Every contribution matters. By becoming a member or a partner of Harvest International School, you'll receive in your email a monthly newsletter filled with heartwarming photos and inspiring videos of the students showcasing the impact of your generosity. And the best part, your donation is tax deductible. Harvest International School relies entirely on supporters like you. Your contributions go directly to Bilingual Kids Incorporated, a 501c3 organization, ensuring that 100% of the funds are directed towards the school's teachers and operational costs. Join us in this journey of empowerment and transformation. Let's make education a reality for these young minds. Together, we can create lasting change and bright futures for these students in Nairobi, Kenya. Don't wait any longer. Become a partner of Harvest International School today. Donate by Cash App, Bilingual Kids, or by mail. 8 Masada Mountain Drive, Anniston, Alabama, 36206. Or you can find this information in the comments or the description. Please include your name, phone number, and your email so we can send you the monthly newsletter. The power to change lives is in your hands. Let's build a better tomorrow, one student at a time. Thank you for your generosity and for being part of something truly extraordinary. Together, we can light up the path to education and success.